for economic growth and welfare. And I'm very happy to share with you that the EGROW Foundation, as we call it, has been very successful in its webinar series. The objective of the webinar series, actually the objective of EGROW Foundation was to do policy research and make recommendations to the government on based on solid good research. So it's a research based policy think tank. And when the COVID happened, we realized that research at this point in a traditional way could become a challenge. How do we continue to benefit the policymakers and reach out to them? So we started this webinar series. In this webinar series, our objective was very plain and simple. We work on contemporary issues. We get the best minds from across the world working on issues which could be dear to us. We started with the idea of having a blend of non-Indians and Indians talking and discussing about our issues, contemporary issues. And we were very fortunate to have met that blend. You will be surprised. We had the privilege of 2 Nobel laureates coming and speaking to us. And we are also very happy to host a series of talks under G20, Task Force 5, where we did on international economic order. We also thought that we would like to work on G20 further, and though our term gets over as the presidency of G20 and by September 9 and 10, when the last meetings take place of the heads of state, but we are continuing on female empowerment, women empowerment, and participation, higher participation in female labor force. That series, which comes under G20, will continue. We have already done four lectures under that. Our aim is to do 11, and 7 more are lined up till middle of December. So till middle of December, our calendar is full, but these are the type of issues we are going to be tackling. To continue with this policy-oriented webinars, we are very lucky that Vijay Singh Chauhan, and I'm sure he'll soon be Dr. Vijay Singh Chauhan, is agreed to do a presentation with us. And this is a topic on trade facilitation. So let me just introduce you because it went in between. So give me half a second. So the speaker for the day is Mr. Vijay Singh Chauhan. He's a dear friend of mine. And I have given a brief introduction about his workplace. But I should mention that his previous policy assignments in the Government of India were covering fiscal policy and taxation matters. He was under Secretary in Tax Research Unit of the Department of Revenue, Director Budget, and Director FIPB in the Department of Economic Affairs, advisor in the Expenditure Management Commission, and OSD to the Finance Minister and Director in the FM office. As a student, he is pursuing PhD, and I think it's about to be completed, in Trade Facilitation from Jindal School of Government and Public Policy, Sonipat. As a teacher, he has joined IIT Jodhpur as adjunct professor of practice. He is also a consultant with the ADB. As I mentioned earlier, me and Mr. Vijay have taught together at various IIMs. Together, we have done it. And he has also taught at MDI, Gurgaon, IIM Bangalore, as I mentioned, IIM Visakhapatnam, National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, New Delhi, Mumbai School of Economics, besides NACIN, and has published research papers in peer-reviewed journals on fiscal matters and trade facilitation issues. His co-authored paper titled Measuring Trade Facilitation, Evidence from India has been placed as room document by the WTO. He also writes on these issues in the national dailies. He studied economic honors at St. Stephen's College and then obtained masters in economics from Delhi School of Economics. As I mentioned, he is about to complete his PhD now from Jindal. He is a passionate long distance runner, having run more than 30 half marathons. He received the Presidential Award in 2014. With this, I would now invite Mr. Vijay Singh to present his research. 30, 35, 40 minutes. Would that be
Yes,
okay?
I'll try to be brief so that you can have more time.
Sure. Please.
Thank you so much, Charan. I'm delighted here with so many that I have worked with. Mr. Johri was the commissioner when I started this exercise, and I'm also privileged to have Professor Rajiv Malhotra here, who's my PhD supervisor at the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. I have Shruti here, who actually has helped me put together this PowerPoint presentation, and there are more of officers who worked with me in doing this study, which actually goes back to 2017. So in some sense, I would be sharing the results of a study that started in some form in 2017 when Mr. Johri was the chief commissioner there, and we have managed to sustain this, not just sustain it, it has evolved over a long period of time, and we have tried to find answers to a whole lot of questions. So I will be talking about what we have found, what are the things that have helped us, and what is perhaps the way forward. As Mr. Johri was pointing out, that what we are going to look at is trade facilitation and how do we measure. So the measure is actually trade time, and trade time can be measured, as we say, from data which can be obtained from customs automated system, because the entire cargo clearance is in an electronic environment. Nonetheless, this data can also be obtained, and in India is obtained through RFID trackers which are put in the containers at a whole lot of seaports particularly, and that data is also available through a private initiative in public domain. The challenge there is that it does not provide for further insights, but it does provide the time that the container remains in the port ecosystem. More significantly, there are a whole lot of studies which are more of a perception-based or a survey-based perception exercise. I mentioned LPI, which is the Logistics Performance Indicator, presented by the World Bank. There are many other indicators. Actually, one of the academic literature points to 12 such indicators which are available. But for a variety of reasons, we think that measuring trade time, data which is obtained from the customs automated system, which fortunately can be available only to the government and therefore is often not used, and will not be possible to use this kind of a for international comparisons. But those are the kind of studies. In India, we also have a very annual time release study, which is a sample-based study in the sense that we study only the documents. Bills of entry is the document that is filed for import, and shipping bill is the document that is filed for export. So I'll use these terms as I'm more familiar with them. So those are annual study, which is based on 1 week sample. However, it started at Navasheva, and it has now evolved to cover 15 ports, and those 15 ports fall under 4 broad categories of modes of transport, which is seaport. The containers could also be cleared through what are called dry ports or inland container depots, air cargo, which is through the airports, and then the 4th category is actually land port, which essentially is on the border, primarily with Nepal and Bangladesh, that we have the report from. The CBIC also presents the entire average time in a very simple manner of the entire population of bills of entry filed in a month, which will lag 3 months, which is presented as what is called the monthly dwell time report. We also have actually high frequency data, which is ICE dash, which actually presents the time taken in the cargo, which was cleared as of yesterday. So there are 3 frequency data with different scope and coverage in terms of the detailing that is available. So these are the performance trackers that are available to us. What we speak about is now a combination out of all of this. But while we started this exercise, we were curious to find out as to when did this concern first begin and what was the time that was taken during that period, in some sense, to actually use that as a benchmark. And we found that the oldest study, actually the CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General's performance audit, which was presented in 2015 but refers to the average release time for 2010-11 of almost 14 days. It is an unsegregated number for the entire country. The study does not give the details of how it arrived at, but we'll take that as 14 days and show over a period of show to our presentation as to how this number by itself needs to be far more nuanced for us to be providing us information about information required for public policy making. Nonetheless, there are some of the points, stages which took time, was reported in that study, but we're not going to get into this. Thereafter, from 2013 till 2017, this exercise was actually done as a post facto statistical exercise. In the sense, subsequently we studied and saw how much time did it take. However, 2018, what was we decided was to use this tool of study actually as a live exercise of pre-announced exercise to reach out to the trade and share the benefits of such exercise both with the entire ecosystem, all the stakeholders, because we realize that it's their participation which will actually help us in reducing the average release time. That, as was told, evolved into a national time release study in 2019. Over a period of time, we realized that while the initial focus of the study was on imports, what is important is actually exports as well. And we realized that the challenges in measuring export or in export clearance are significantly different, something which we'll come to in a while. Recognizing that the details and the frequency of study for the average dwell time, the dwell time report and the time release study is different, we thought that it would be interesting actually to align the definition and the coverage in terms of the port of the monthly dwell time report and the national time release. I'm happy to report that in March 2022, this alignment was completed insofar as import study is concerned. However, the export is a work in progress. In this chart, I have summarized results of the release time, basically on the basis of the national time release study from 2021 to 2023. As I said, that we have 4 port categories, which is the C port. Look at the imports first in the first left-hand panel, which is there. And there you see that in C port or Nhava Sheva, in 2017, the average release time was 181 hours. Just to give you a perspective, go and look at the ease of doing business report of the World Bank. For that year, for Nhava Sheva, the perception report indicated that the average time taken was 280 hours. In fact, one of our major motivations of undertaking this kind of an exercise was that we found that the perception quite often were far more inimical to the ground reality. And because the data, such unimpeachable data is available to be sourced and studied, we actually took that up to continue with this exercise. So what we find is that the time taken in imports at Nhava Sheva has almost halved between 2017 to 2023. The reduction is a lot less at the ICD and the ACC. There is a similar reduction. The ICPs actually take, ICPs are the integrated checkpost. One of the 2 ports that we cover, one is Raxaul on the Indo-Nepal border and the other one is Petropol on the Bangladesh border. And we realize that the least time is actually taken at these land ports. There is an interesting aside which is there, that that when this study, when the targets were set for how much time should we take to clear the consignment, the target for clearance through land port was same as the seaport. Obviously, it did not have the benefit of a study of the kind that has subsequently been done to realize that the actual time taken at the land ports is a lot less. So what we realize, and Mr. Johri briefly referred to, is that we measure how much of bills of entry. So the target that was given to us was that we clear the port consignment at the seaport, ICD, and the land port in less than 48 hours and in less than 24 hours at the air cargo. And the time for export was exactly the half of the time that was the target that was given for imports. So when you look at the actual performance, what we realize, this is the average that was given. And for the reasons that I'll come to in the subsequent slide, we adopted a innovative measure for achievement, which is called the distance to the NTFAP target, which is basically what percentage of bills of entry actually end up giving us the arithmetic mean of the target, which means that when we say that for ACC 80% target has been achieved, which means that if we ignore the 20 of the bills of entry which took maximum time, the average works out to 24 hours. So we call them outliers, and subsequently there has been a lot of focus on understanding the behavior of these outlier bills of entry. So this is the achievement that we have as of 2023 on the import side. When we look at the export side, what we find is that the time taken is actually the double of the time taken in import when we look at the land port. And the other thing that we that significant reduction we have noticed import side still not there in the export side. Part of the reason is something which you see in the next slide, which is that the achievement of 100% actually is the time that is taken in regulatory clearance. So in regulatory clearance, the time taken is very, very limited. The time actually gets taken in the processes which are what is called post-leg export order. After the customs, on the basis of the input of all the regulatory agencies, says that the cargo can be exported, there is a huge amount of time which is taken. The government has separately constituted a committee of which I was a member, and that committee has studied this, submitted its report. But since that is not in public domain, I'm not going to delve into it. But all that I would say on this is that export release time, the challenge is not so much reducing the regulatory time that is taken, but the infrastructural time that is taken, which is also plagued by the uncertainty regarding how much time would it take for the cargo to be cleared and the frequency of the conveyance through which the goods have to be exported. So a whole lot of trade actually errs on the side of caution to have the cargo reach the port of export well in time so that it does not miss the conveyance that is scheduled and that may not have a very high frequency. So that's why where the frequency of the conveyance leaving is high, like at the ICP, the cargo release time is much lower. On the basis of our study, we identified what we called path to promptness. The path to promptness actually is that if these steps were taken by the trade or by the department or the technology enabled, then the average release time is much, much less. So those four are, as Mr. Johri explained, pre-arrival processing, which essentially means that we start the documentary clearance well before the cargo has arrived, and using our risk management system, be ready to know in which case we actually need to intervene. And that intervention percentage has been declining over a long period of time as the sophistication of our risk management system increases, which is captured in facilitation bit. That is further facilitated by a program called Authorized Economic Operator, where regular importers can, on the basis of uh, voluntary commitment or giving information to the government, actually enroll as a trusted client, and thereafter they are entitled for a whole lot of benefits. And in those cases, the cargo is actually not detained at the port for examination, but subsequently verified on the basis of the document. So that's the AEO scheme. Again, as Mr. Johri was saying, that the work that is done at the ports involves a lot of regulatory agencies. So putting them all on one platform, which is the single window, that's the digital window, actually allows for parallel processing of the documentary verification and non-repeat of a whole lot of exercise. And that is the fourth component of paths to promptness. I have not mentioned direct port delivery because that's specific to only the seaports, but at the seaports it has contributed significantly to the reduction in the release time. So what is the impact of these four paths to promptness? So if we took the overall release time of 86 hours for seaports, what we find is that those who took recourse to pre-arrival processing, the time reduced to 78 hours. Please note here that if we were to compare those which took recourse to pre-arrival processing vis-a-vis those which did not take recourse to pre-arrival processing, the difference would be much larger. The fact of the matter is that at the seaports, more than 90% of the consignments take recourse to pre-arrival processing. Therefore, this improvement or this benefit of about 9.3 or 10% is actually in some sense an underestimate. The similar thing, that facilitation by itself results in further reduction of the time. But if we were to compare facilitated with non-facilitated width of entry, the benefit of facilitation would be far starker. Similarly, if it is an authorized economic operator, the benefit actually is furthermore. And if we combine the three benefits of an AU who has filed an advance bill of entry, which has been facilitated in the sense that his self-declaration has been accepted by the department, the time is actually halved. So that's the kind of benefit that we get from adoption of path to promptness, but that requires the efforts on part of all the stakeholders, importers, customs, and the other regulatory entities. So when we looked at the challenges in terms of where the time is now being taken, what we find is that the single most important point where time is taken is actually payment of duty. And that time is actually 98 hours in cases where the delays happen. Similarly, where the self-declaration actually requires an amendment, either because there was an error by the trade or the department found some misdeclaration or required change to comply with the law, the time taken actually goes up to 95 hours. One of the interesting things that we have found is that actually, even after the customs allows the goods to be taken out, particularly from the CFS at the seaports, there is more than a day that is taken in cargo moving out from there. And in fact, at the CFSs, it is more than almost 3 days, which basically seems to suggest that the CFSs are now being used for storage of imported cargo before they are transported to the place where they have to be either sold or utilized in the consumption process. So last year, we started this analysis of what is it that is actually anticipating the impact of the pre-arrival process of the path to promptness, and we have identified delays in payment of duty, increase in amendments, and then those consignments which require other regulatory approvals, and they are more intrusive than mere checking of the documents. Those are the three, and the fourth one is actually explaining the reason that the trade now prefers the goods to be stored in a CFS after the clearance by the assignment. So in some sense, that should be treated as cargo which has already been imported into the country. So starting from the study that was done by the CAG in 2015 to what we have found till now, what we notice is that we would expect that the distribution of average release time would be a normal distribution. In fact, when we started, we thought it was a normal distribution, but when we plotted that over next couple of years, what we find is that, you know, while the peak is shifting closer to zero, there is a tail which is absolutely not getting thin. And that's the story of the fat tail. These are the bills of entry where the problem continues to be intractable. So when we looked at the data, so what we did was that we sorted all the bills of entry which did not meet our NTFAP target and looked at what were the major identifying factors in those bills of entry. This is what we found. And as we have said, that those goods which remain in the CFS take a lot of time. The time taken in payment of duty thereafter is a major issue. Those bills of entry which have amendment, that is a major issue. And the delayed filing of it, despite the fact that the government by law actually says that if a bill of entry is paid in filing, there would be a penalty, there would be a fee of 5,000 rupees for each day of delay. Despite this kind of a fiscal or monetary fine, we find that there are some trade which is not either able to file the bill of entry on time or is not interested in filing the bill of entry on time. Whether it is unable or whether it is uninterested is what we will need to find out going forward in our studies. Mr. Johri talked a lot about technology, and there is no denying that it is the technology that is driving both trade facilitation and equally importantly, actually the performance measurement. So it's the customs automated system which allows for the entire documents to be filed. Risk management allows for a much higher level of facilitation, more than 90% the cargo, and it goes up to about 97% if we talk of the authorized economic operator, which are actually completely facilitated. It has also allowed for single window, which allows for parallel processing. What is called the faceless assessment has led to dismantling of the geographical and functional silos. In the sense, earlier the documents which related to import through a particular port were processed only at that port. Now they can be processed or they are processed at all various ports. The real benefit of this kind of a dismantling should actually be visible at much of the smaller ports which are not covered the TRS, which covers only the 15 ports. But it would be interesting going forward to study the impact of dismantling of the geographical silos over the entire about 200 ports which cargo gets imported into the country. Insofar as measurement is concerned, these are absolute timestamps available to the last minute, and there is no way that these can be fudged. So the data on the basis of which we speak about are absolutely unimpeachable. So time release is like a tool which we have used for multiple purposes, far more than what it was used anywhere else. Performance measurement is obviously very clear. Nudging trade is something that we picked up essentially by citing reference to the one who has the fastest bill of entry cleared, the data when it gets available. We talk to the trade, use this data regularly in our interactions with the trade to get them to understand that what is being done by some of the importers can be adopted and done easily by the other importers as well. The other interesting thing is that it has built confidence amongst the trade as well as departmental officers that we can clear the cargo in much less time. And flowing from that, what you will see if you looked at the larger Customs Act and its implementation, the adherence to timeline has slipped far beyond just the cargo clearance. I had the privilege of being the first customs authority of advanced ruling in Delhi, and the law requires us to give a ruling within 90 days of the application being in its totality. And I'm happy to report that the average time taken in pronouncing those advanced ruling, and this is a quasi-judicial process in line with the judicial process, and unlike what we face in the courts or in the other processes of tariq pe tariq, we actually managed to give the rulings within 90 days. The most important, insofar as I think, is the outreach. We've gone about using the data and our findings convey to the larger set of stakeholders and policymakers that we have actually reduced time. And as I said, that the challenge of the perception, which was communicated through some of these perception-based studies, that Indian customs takes or Indian regulatory system takes much longer time to clear a cargo, has actually been substantially overcome. If I was to just give a data, I was recently studying the time that is taken in clearing a cargo at Chittagong port in Bangladesh, and the time taken there now is about 11 days. It still is. In 2022, they took about 11 days to clear the cargo, something which we did in 2010. We managed to move forward from there. If I was to give another comparable example, while the time taken in clearing the cargo at Petrapol in India is about less than 1 day, the time taken on the other side of the border at Benapol is actually about 10 days. So that's the kind of achievement which has been made possible essentially because of exercise evidence-based policy. So this validates our initial or the saying, which is so common, that what gets measured gets done. It also moves to the next stage of measure what really matters. Something that I give a lot of credit to Mr. Johri for and take pride in is the fact that we have developed an amazing in-house capacity to conduct sophisticated TRS, and we've been doing that over a period of time. Some of my younger colleagues will be participating in this exercise, and hats off to them for being able to bring out this kind of a study. If somebody was to look at this study over a period of last 6 years, you would see every year the study's quality, thoroughness, and the statistical rigor and the depth that we go into has been improving. So this year, the 2023 study has focused on export. We realized that what we were looking at was only a small portion of the supply chain, and we are trying to look at and take that forward to become far more robust, because the Indian exporters, if they have to achieve the kind of target which has been set under the new trade policy, would require to have the streamlined and expeditious supply chain that is not just confined to the customs area. In the last question that should be asked, because we do not want to compare one port with the other, am I better than I was? Oh, I'm substantially better than I was. And the exercise then is, how do we get better? This study has helped the department, and I'm sure that it will be carried forward by the younger officers in the department so that they continue to get better over the period of time. With this, thank you so much. My presentation is over, and Dr. Charan Singh, let me know how do we proceed further from here. Thank you.
We can so we would welcome questions. Mr. Johri.
Hello.
Yeah.
Is there any question? Are we?
We'll be happy to answer the questions if you have one, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir.
very quick question, Vijay. The study seems very interesting. And most importantly, as I always say, it's a very important public policy study. And that is why very significant work which has been done. Quick question. In the study which has been done, while you've mentioned the number of days in the example that you gave saved for the term, any costing to that effect? Or maybe you mentioned and today connection was bad, we couldn't hear it.
So we've not looked at the cost, though we can. So there are some global studies where they convert these savings in the trade time into trade cost, but the costs are sometimes independent of that, and they could be studied. So we had attempted at one point of time to measure benefits in terms of trade cost, particularly of what was called the direct port delivery. But let's put it very simply that if we were to calculate the trade cost at a seaport and we take $10,000 as the rental of a 40 feet container, and the time saved is 3 days, it will turn out into a humongous number. But to the best of my information, we don't have a very rigorous study of putting a rough number, even a rough number to this on the national level.
My other question, if there are others, fine, but I just had one more quick question that we have spoken about the example you gave is Bangladesh. And if we compare this with the ports in advanced countries, what would be the, how would we be placed statistically?
So that's a question which is very often asked. And challenge in answering that is that most of these developed countries no longer actually put out their time release study in public domain. The fact of the matter is that the TFA actually encourages the country to conduct such a study and put them in public domain. Most of the developed countries don't do that. So one of the readily available data, time series data for reduction is for Japan. And they cleared the consignment in much less time because they started doing this in early 1990s. The challenge there is that most of the developed countries actually have no revenue considerations. And they don't have, so India is the largest user of anti-dumping duty. And these are the kind of concerns which actually result in a lot more time taken at the Indian ports than at some of the other developed countries. But there are studies which measure what is called the turnaround time, which is the turnaround of the vessel. And a recent study which covered Nhava Sheva actually said that the turnaround, physical turnaround of at Nhava Sheva is actually better than even the Singapore port.
I see. That is something very impressive. If we are doing better than the Singapore port, that means that's something really appreciable. Well, as Dr. Vishanda said, we are open for questions. I happen to be at a different place rather than my office. So therefore, there are some, when I start my video, I think my audio gets impacted. So Dr. Vishandas has taken over, and he's also founder director at EGROW. So Dr. Vishandas, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Charan. Thank you, Dr. Vijay Singh Chauhan, who is going to be doctor soon. And I'm sure he has already done extensive work which deserves beyond PhD, and it is equivalent to DSc even, our postdoctoral. Anyway, my congratulations to you. Vivek, Johri, I was hearing both of you with great interest and intention. Just one small question before I say thanks and all those things. I mean, the question is open to both the panelists. Uh, See, what is the future for the India's trade policy? And then we have fixed the target for $2 trillion by 2030. What steps need to be taken to achieve that? And another question, in recently the WTO filed a, I mean, the US filed a case against India in the WTO and we lost. And on the ground that India gives illegal subsidy, especially under SC So, in case you have some information to address these questions, I'll be very grateful to you. Hello, and
Vivek sir, would you like to answer these questions?
yes, Mr. Vivek Johri, am I audible? Hello, Mr. Vivek Johri. It seems Mr. Vivek is not able to hear us. There is no,
It looks like he
yeah.
can't.
So, Dr. Vijay, can you answer in case?
That's a very difficult question, and I have my inputs on this subject would not really be that of an expert. The challenges to promoting India's exports are many, and the time that is taken is uh, that is just a small bit of it. Uh, the disputes that arise in terms of the India subsidizing, I think some of those are more driven by economic diplomacy and issues like that. Some of the agreements are so designed, but then you just heard that recently there were 5 disputes that India and US had pending in the WTO, and during the Prime Minister's visit to US, they were all settled outside the WTO dispute mechanism. So one should not get too worked up about some of these disputes. The efforts to make India into a more robust source of exports from the country has to be multi-pronged. Our share in global export is absolutely like disproportionate size of our economy. Uh, and foreign trade policy talks of a whole lot of measures. So we'll have to wait. We've been working on trying to promote India's exports. Every trade policy has a couple of new schemes that, but the success in that has been fairly limited. But I would not really go into and give any kind of a definitive opinion because I really haven't applied myself.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any question to our esteemed participant? If there is any question, please. Yeah, Dr. Matthew.
Am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Matthew, you are audible. Please carry on. Ask your question.
Thank you very much for the research presentation of it, the trade facilitation as a topic. Of course, the statistics which I could not fully swallow, but I assume that serious efforts were made in India to break through in our international trade scenario. Thank you very much for the presentation of the dynamics. But I have a general question. I don't know whether that suits the context. My question is, when WTO was constructed in 1995, January, what was the global scenario, the trade scenario, and where are we now today? We find a lot of challenges on the world scale, like neo-mercantilism. The very members who constituted WTO, for example, United States of America, and following up China, they are violating the WTO rules. So in this predicament, how we as an emerging trading country, how can we get through these constraints? That is my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So So when we got down to doing this exercise, we actually opted for absolutely the lowest hanging fruit in so-called improving India's international trade. That, while the others and the larger government and the trade experts grapple with those issues of making the multilateralism work better and those kind of things, there is absolutely no reason why why the cargo should actually get delayed at the ports. And therefore, we have actually worked with absolutely a very low hanging fruit, a very limited point. And today's purpose was actually to show that that limited point has worked and that there is a scope to further improve that. This by itself, for sure, not going to solve India's export problems or anything related. Thank you.
Okay, so if there is no other question, let me take the singular privilege of thanking Professor Charan. Can I extend the vote of thanks to our esteemed?
Sure.
Yeah,
If there are no more questions,
yeah,
please go ahead.
yeah. So I must congratulate uh, Shri Vivek Johri and Dr. Vijay Singh Chauhan for their masterful exposition on measuring trade facilitation in India for continuous improvement. Because nothing is static and everything moves on, and therefore the improvement has to take place. And but the way they have presented their case on this, it's really mind-boggling, and it has broadened my horizon of thinking. In particular, I know a little bit about international trade, but I got more insights after listening to you, both the speaker. I have so on behalf of EGROW Foundation, on behalf of our CEO, Professor Charan Singh, and myself, the entire EGROW, and all the participants, I really thank you very much. You have spared valuable time and enlightened us. It's not only coverage in terms of the its width, but the depth, which I value a lot. Because coverage in terms of width can be done by anybody, but doing the depth is very important, and you are really enlightened us, and I'm thankful to you on behalf of EGROW. Charan, you have to make some announcement for the next week.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I would join Dr. Ashok Vishwandas in thanking you, Vijay, for sparing time and speaking to us. For a long time, we have been pursuing you, but finally you found time to share your research with us. And I thought this was very good research. And as I keep saying, this is a research-based policy think tank, very relevant for us. So thank you very much for this. The announcement that I have to make is twofold. One is, as I was mentioning, EGROW in its last 5 years has found that though we speak about financial literacy, there is increasing need for economic literacy. And EGROW is making a humble attempt to increase economic literacy in our country. So if you visit our website, you will see that we have started a series of lectures, which we do generally late evenings for the benefit of anybody, non-economists basically, for the benefit of anybody to understand the basic concepts of what economics is, what a fiscal policy or monetary policy is, what is exchange rate, what is trade policy, and talking about contemporary economic issues on what is industry in India, what's its role, what is its role in of agriculture, talking about what is the growth pattern in our country, what is the health system, what is the financial system like, how about defense, given this Russia-Ukraine war is going on, where is India standing? So we started talking about these basic concepts to spread economic literacy. I would request you to visit our website, as well as spread the word if that can help. And you will realize that we are attempting this exercise basically to raise the level of economic understanding in our country. So that is one announcement. The other is, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are doing the G20, and under G20, women empowerment is very important. And EGROW believes that if female labor force participation increases, we'll be able to enhance our country's GDP significantly. It is in that very context that next week we have an empirical study, survey-based study done in UP by Dr. Pramod Kumar, who is the director of Giri Institute in Lucknow. He is going to be presenting his research, again a survey-based study like today, which Vijay has discussed with us. Pramod will be discussing a similar study next week, and this will come under the series of women empowerment, because that is how he's tailored his study, based in Lucknow, based in UP. So I would invite you for that. The last announcement I would like to make is that today's presentation, though we had a technical snag right from beginning, and I don't know why, but right from beginning, this technical snag did disrupt our presentation. However, tomorrow by noon, we will have this presentation on our website. You are welcome to use it the way you feel comfortable. And because it's a policy-oriented study with policy implications, you may like to even use it for government and other seat modes. So I'll leave it to you. We will put the study on our website tomorrow by noon. With that, let me once again thank Vijay for doing this presentation, Mr. Vivek Johri for coming over and taking care and chairing the session, though I know it got disrupted because of the technical snag. My colleague, Dr. Ashok Vishandas, for being around and helping us in today's presentation webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.